So, good morning, good afternoon to some. Thank you for joining the Teams training. This is an example of an onboarding session that Microsoft is conducting for customers, typically within their own tenant. And today we have two volunteers from one of our partner companies, Zoom AI, and they will be demoing on their tenant. And my name is Bill Spencer. I manage the large account relationships for the Microsoft Teams engineering organization. And I'm pleased to go through an onboarding session for Microsoft Teams. And I want to emphasize that this is the exact same approach that we took within Microsoft. And it's important to try to get an entire project team together for the training session so that everyone can see how to use the new tool, can have a little fun along the way, but importantly walk out of the meeting able to create their own team, their own channels, their own tabs, and to immediately be productive. And I try to drive the team to commit that for 1 week for a particular project, they will use Teams as their primary collaboration tool. And then at the end of the week, they can make a decision as to whether they want to adopt it long term. But most people by the end of that week find the advantages to Teams so significant that they adopt it. And you may be saying, why do I need another collaboration tool from Microsoft? I have Outlook, I have Yammer, I have SharePoint, I have Skype for Business. Why do I need Teams? And the answer is, for some users, in many situations, it saves them a lot of time. And I would say that if you spend half your day on half a dozen or fewer projects, if you move those project collaborations into Teams, you will save an hour a day, which is, in my opinion, quite significant. So Teams has really taken off here at Microsoft. We did these onboarding sessions, probably did about 40 of them inside Microsoft, and now they're over 100,000 users and monthly users. And that's about the same size as our full employment base, but many of those are also our contractors. And for this to take off at Microsoft the way it has really shows that it's a great way to manage projects, particularly complex projects. And we like to think of Teams as the second hub within Office 365, the first being Outlook. The second hub for teamwork is Microsoft Teams. And teamwork is something that is becoming an increasing part of most information workers' days. Independent surveys have shown that the amount of teams that people are on has doubled in the past 5 years. Generally, half of their work is collaborative in nature. Instead of an individual working at their own desk on their own PC, we now have a greater emphasis on open plan offices. Project teams tend to be split across locations or time zones, or it could be kind of shift type of work. And you need to keep the collaboration conversation going in an organized way. And that's really where Teams is so helpful. Not only has it taken off within Microsoft, without, by the way, any corporate mandate to use Teams, it's simply been adopted because it's the best tool. And we're seeing that outside of Microsoft as well. There's over 125,000 organizations that have adopted Teams in 181 markets. Teams is available in 29 languages currently, and that's going up to 51 by the end of this calendar year. And there's a significant adoption in the 120 million users of Office 365. So let's talk about the 4 design goals for Teams. First, it's the one place for all your activity. Excuse me. And it brings together calls, chats, meetings, and all the resources of Office 365, which is really the second point. It's well integrated, particularly with SharePoint and Active Directory, but it also has all the various applications. And instead of thinking about, oh, I'm going to open Excel or oh, I'm going to open PowerPoint, instead you think, I'm going to work on a particular project or a topic, and I go to that channel or chat rooms related to that project or topic, and there is a tab for our metrics, our dashboard or our budget. There is a tab for our team notes. There is a key presentation that we're working on together. And those are obvious within each of those chat rooms. And that's how we've brought a task focus to Office 365. And each one of these chat rooms or channels can be customized for a particular project or topic, and they can be including third-party applications. Any service that uses secure HTTP can be integrated into a particular channel, and there's over 200 third-party extensions that are available in Teams. And finally, all this is built on enterprise security and manageability. So the conversations are encrypted at rest and encrypted over the wire. The data is fully compliant, and we have an easy way of managing this. So it's really the lowest cost option for an enterprise to take advantage of the power of group chat, because the Teams license is included at no additional cost in E1 and higher license SKUs for Office 365. And you can have up to 500,000 guests external to your tenant, and they can participate in your conversations, in your collaborations using Teams at no additional cost to the organization. So it's a secure, scalable, customizable, and extensible solution for team collaboration. Also, Teams is written as a standard web service, and there is a Mac and Windows desktop client that wraps that web service and improves the audio and video capability and the notification capability, but it's the same feature set across Mac, Windows, and the web. And then there's native applications for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. And I'd encourage you, right now to go up and install Teams from teams.microsoft.com, or you can go to your App Store and download the mobile application from the Apple Store, from the Android Store, from the Windows Phone Store. So please do that while we're going through this presentation. So I'm going to ask Julian, our volunteer from Zoom AI, to take over the display, and I'm going to guide him through the features of the product. And I think it's important to know that if you do these kinds of trainings internally, that it helps to have a user who is not very familiar with Teams become the person who is guiding, who is showing their screen and is being guided through the application. So I appreciate Julian volunteering. You'll notice that Julian is demoing on his Mac desktop. And for those who are Windows users or web users, this is the same experience. Virtually everything I'll show you today is the same. So Julian, if you wouldn't mind, you're currently in the chat application. I'll go through the major parts of the application, but on the far left is a dark purple bar. That's the app bar. And if you could select Teams, we can click on the Teams app, and clicking on that app populates the white column, which is called the left rail, and the light blue area, which is called the main arena. And actually, in this mode, he has the option of creating a team. So let's create a team, and you'll notice that there's one other public team that he has the option of joining. Let's call this customer, because we're going to have a scenario for a sales organization. Could you make this? You could make this a public team, by the way, if you wanted. You can choose to make it public. So when I'm typically demoing within a tenant, I'll make a public team and encourage other people who are on the call to join that tenant, which I encourage. Why don't you click next? And why don't we add your colleague Jesse to this team? Now, a nice thing is when you make it a public team, Jesse could join by himself. Generally, I'm in private teams, by the way, but for training purposes, I'll often create a public team. And you can have up to 2,500 people on this team. That's right. Well, whenever you create a team, it's always a best practice to have more than one owner. So let's set Jesse up as an owner for this team as well. And owners have privileges in terms of adding additional people to the team. Now, in a public team, others can join themselves. But Jesse can also, Jesse and Giuliano can both change different settings that, for example, the ability for people to add additional channels. That's one thing that a team owner can do that a team member can't change those settings. So here is our team that's been created. Now, by default, you'll notice in the left rail, that white column, there is the customer, and that's the team name, and there's an icon next to it, and that's how you know that's a team header. And then beneath that is a list of channels. Now, there's only one created by default. That's the general channel. And we can create an additional channel. You'll notice that each one of these has a little ellipsis or dot, dot, dot menu or more menu. And why don't we click on the more menu for the channel, and click on that, and let's add a channel. There we go. And I think it's a best practice to create an urgent channel. And this is something that everyone on the team can follow, and where you can post messages that everyone should get a notice on right away. Thank you. There we go. So it whips up this additional channel, and you'll notice that after the word general, after the general channel, the other channels are in alphabetical order. And Julian can favorite or unfavorite this. When you create it, it makes it favorite by the default, but he can click on that star, and that will take it away from his left rail. But let's keep it favorited for now. That's perfect. And what I want you to do is go to the More menu specific to this channel, and get the link to the channel. See how it says get the link? There we go. Let's grab that link. Copy that, and let's go back to that menu one more time for the urgent channel, that's right, and let's follow the channel. And what this means is every time anyone posts in that channel, there will be a notice given to Giuliano. So let's go back to the general channel now, and we'll get the post going there. And Jesse, I'm going to ask you to make a post on the urgent channel. That will provide a notice to Giuliano. Okay, so now in the main arena, you can see there's a number of items, and these icons a lot of people ignore, but they're actually pretty useful, for adding more people, creating channels, opening the frequently asked questions. So that is that's helpful. You'll also notice that Giuliano's activities have been captured here in the general channel. So in terms of making Jesse a team owner, in terms of favorites, whether he created it and added it to favorites, etc. So that's all captured for him. And now that Jesse has posted in the urgent channel, you'll see that there's actually a notice for him there. You don't need to click on it yet. We'll come to that. But I just wanted people to notice that as soon as someone posts in a channel that he is following, Giuliano will get notices there. So whenever I start a thread, you can do the simple message, just sort of hello world or welcome to team, something along those lines as your first post. And in the bottom of the main arena is a compose box, and you can just type in a simple message there. And like any text message, when you hit enter, it sends that message in this simple version. There we go. Perfect. And you'll notice that these are threaded conversations. So in addition to the compose box at the bottom, there's a reply button for each of the threads. So Jesse could, for example, reply to Giuliano's post and extend that message, and keeping it all in one thread. To the extent I can, I try to keep everything together in a thread. So if I have a new topic, I'll actually look to see if that topic's already under conversation, and I'll try to reply to the thread in order to keep all the context together. But let's create a more complicated post here, and this is going to be a post encouraging people to follow the urgent channel. And to make a more complicated post, you want to expand from this compose box to compose form using the icon with a little A and a pen next to it. There we go. Yeah, click on that, and this makes it a little bit more like an email message. So you have a subject line, so you could say in the subject, please follow the urgent channel. And I really appreciate you volunteering to do this, Giuliano, because, you know, little typing mistakes, etc., are all being watched, but you've got a friendly audience, so don't worry about it. And then you could start this with an at mention, and we actually in this box by default make a little reminder for people to do an at mention. So why don't you put in at and then start to spell the word team, and it fills in this customer team. So you can do at team, that's great. Click on that. So then hit a space, and then why don't you do at channel? And that's a way of notifying everyone who has this channel as a favorite. Now, it turns out for the general channel, that's the exact same thing. But let's just show this example. Click on general, so, and then hit a space, and you can at mention Jesse individual. Now, this at mentioning for an individual is my preferred method. Why don't you backspace over his last name just to make it a little less formal? There we go. So make it more informal. There we go. So, you know, in a typical Microsoft beginning of a thread, we'll use this compose form to make a more logical thread. And we will do a number of at mentions, sometimes as many as 20 at mentions. So our culture is that in order to keep teams as a manageable experience, we have the person who's posting at mention individuals who they think should read this message and perhaps respond to it. So that's an important part of our culture because when you do an at mention, there is a tracking in activity. So we'll be able to see this in a moment, but up in the upper left, you can see the activity app now has a count of 2 items, and that's because one I think is just a post in the urgent channel. The other is an at mention that Jesse has done to Giuliano. Okay, so let's do these posts, and we'll say, please follow our earner channel. Let's see. Click here to go to the urgent channel, and please follow it. And a best practice is select the word urgent channel and click on the link icon, and then paste that link that we had earlier. Should be still in memory. There we go. Insert that. And now this is the link to the channel. For many people, they won't see the channel initially because it will be hidden from them, and we can show that how that works, but it'll be buried in the more channels in the left rail. And then, you know, why don't we put in some fun elements here? So why don't we add an emoticon to this, and right in beneath there you can choose your favorite emoticon, and you can see there's quite a few different options. And select one of those. And now when you're in this, you can hit return and it doesn't send it. So by hitting carriage return, we're not sending this message because we're in the compose form. And just to give an example of some other editing options, why don't you type in the word 1, return 2, return 3. And although this doesn't make a lot of sense for this message, you can select those and then click on the numbers to numerous, and then when we just format them, you could highlight them in a color perhaps, or change the font size, or change the font color. So all the various editing options that you would expect in a simple editor are there. Perfect. And why don't we hit send? And that's the paper airplane icon in the lower right, exactly right there. So click on that, and that will send the message. And you'll see a few things. One is it adds a red badge, and the reason that red badge is Giuliano is a member of the team and the channel, so he's getting that red badge. Jesse will actually get a slightly different red badge, and we'll show one of those in a second, and that's the @mention. So what I've shown so far is a few of the major regions within the user experience. The dark purple bar is the app bar. The white column is the left rail. Then the blue area is the main arena. At the bottom of the main arena is a compose box that can be expanded into a compose form. And I really encourage the use of @mentions. All right. So now let's do sort of a typical day, and that is I'll come in, and the first thing I'll do is I'll look at activity. And that's because that's where all thank you, Jesse. So Jesse, by the way, before we cruise off this, Jesse has given an example of a sticker, and we can show how to compose one of those stickers. People are wondering how to do that. Just click on the sticker icon, which is between the GIF icon and the movie icon. There we go. There's the sticker icon. And this is a set of fun pictures that you can put some text into and customize. Perfect. Yeah, so there's examples of some stickers. Great. All right. Now let's go up to click on the Activity app and show where this is, in a way, the inbox for Teams. And you can see there's a number of things that didn't get notices, but wherever there was an @mention, that is where there is a count. So clicking on this @mention here that Jesse did, go ahead and click on that. It brings you in the main arena to where Jesse called out to Giuliano, and he actually responded to his own thread. And why don't you click on reply just to see how reply works? You'll notice that there is a red badge, so it's easy to find these. You'll also notice that there is a last red line. So if you come to a channel you haven't been on since new content's been added, you can find where you were last reading by going to the last red line. And you could just hit return and send that. That's perfect. Okay. Great. So now everything that happens in this channel will send a notice to Jesse and to Giuliano. So that's helpful. Let's spend a little bit of time in the left rail looking at the different types of feeds here. So you can filter these to look for just @mentions by clicking on that little funnel. And you could, for example, find places where people replied to one of your posts, where you're following a channel. So there's the various @mentions that have happened. And you can see some of those are because he @mentioned the team and the channel. Let's filter this to look at the places where you have been following a channel. So this is where the urgent channel, because he's following it, any post there shows up. And then we can look at the times when people have replied to threads that Giuliano was on. And this way, you could be like me. I'm in a dozen teams. All together they probably have 400 or more channels. I can go through my activity box 2 or 3 times a day, my activity app, and I know that I'm staying on top of all the key things in Teams. So there's a lot of information available to me, but in terms of managing my day, I go to activity and I'll go through the different items, and sometimes there'll be an item that I want to follow up on. Say, for example, the post from Jesse required something that you wanted to follow up on. Each one of these posts has a more menu or a ... just as we showed for channels and for teams. And if you could go to the main arena and say the mission complete with the little boy on the beach, that message. Yeah. And why don't you show how you use a bookmark? Click on that little bookmark icon. He can also do a quick response by giving Jesse a thumbs up there. I use that for general acknowledgement. And if you go to one of the posts that you've already created, let's get rid of that 1, 2, and 3 from your original post. Now that we've shown that feature off, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have 1, 2, 3 there. So let's go with the ellipsis, and you'll notice you can edit, delete, mark as unread. Let's edit this and just select those items and delete them. And when he does, and then you have to hit send again, the paper airplane icon, there we go. You'll notice that the word edited is next to the timestamp. So then people will know that that post has been changed since it was originally put in. And you'll see the various likes. And going through activity is great. And then I'll typically go through my chats, and then I will come back and I'll go up to the profile picture in the upper right. And there is the saved set of messages, and clicking on that, I will see the item that's been postmarked or bookmarked, and I can click on either the pink icon in the left rail or in the app or in the post itself. Either of those, I will toggle that off, and when you do, it clears your saved list. And it's a very satisfying feeling to go through activity, to finish that, then save some items, go through saved, clear off your saved, and that just saves so much time. So it used to be I'd spend about 4 hours in email a day. Now I'm spending 2 hours in email, but only 1 additional hour in Teams. And it's really the time savings is coming from the powerful combination of the activity app, the saved, and the fact that our culture is such that any message I need to read, someone is going to mention me on that message. Okay, so we've shown a lot of the aspects of Teams here in terms of how a typical day will flow. Now let's go a little deeper into what you can do within a particular channel. I mentioned how it's customizable, and you can you can add in capabilities. So let's talk about one of the integrations you can do with bots. So Juliana, why don't you just go through the process of adding the Zoom assistant to this team and give an example of how you might look up a customer, either the customer company or the customer that you're meeting with right here within this channel.
Sure. Okay, so there are actually 2 options when you want to add the bot to MS Teams. You can either use your browser, you go to zoom.ai, and that's a pretty easy onboarding, or you can go to MS Teams Store and look for topics or bots, but we're going to be here at the first row. You just click on it, and then here you can add to a team. So you can select, for example, customer, the team that we just created. Click on it, and then install.
Now that's great, and I'll tell you, this is a bot I use quite a bit because I'm meeting with customers a lot. So let's go through some of the scenarios that in the general channel.
You can either select the channel, yeah. So let's add to the general channel. Setup. There we go. So in order to talk to the bot, we're just going to backspace it. You just need to mention it. So you go at assistant. Here it is. And let's say we're having a meeting with Microsoft, right? I don't really know what Microsoft does, right? It's kind of hard for you to tell that. So you can say, what is Microsoft? to your assistant. Hit send, and then the assistant gets back to you saying, well, here's what I found about Microsoft. So you got Microsoft Windows, Excel. It's a summary of the company you're about to meet with, right? But
And
let's say
the nice thing about this is now everyone on the team can benefit from this query. You know, Giuliano could go to Google, could go to Bing, do a search, but in this case, he's sharing this in a convenient way for the whole team, and there's this helpful set of links that anyone on the team could follow up on.
exactly. And let's say you're about to have a meeting with Jesse, and you want to know more about Jesse. So the way you do that, it's again, you mention the bot, it's your assistant, and you can say something like, who is Jesse, right? Then the bot will look for information and gets me a brief summary of Jesse's past experiences, a brief summary about his bio, organization, even his personality snapshot, so you can be prepared for the meeting.
And where's it pulling this information from?
It's from the web, all the free information from LinkedIn, Twitter, all the free information available on the internet. That's where we're pulling the info.
And what I like about this feature is I can look up someone I'm meeting with, pulls information from these various sources. And if I go to LinkedIn, Microsoft owns LinkedIn. I really like the tool, but I don't like the way it notifies people that I've looked at their bio, because sometimes if I've known someone for a few years, it's kind of embarrassing that I have to go and check on their bio before I meet with them, say the third or fourth time. But sometimes I need to do that. So what's nice is I can pull that information right here from Zoom AI. Everyone on the team benefits. That's another nice thing. It's right here in the conversation thread, and it's searchable. So, for example, there's a bit of an indexing lag on some items, but if you go up to the search box, which is in the top, and you look for NASA, I'm pretty sure it'll pull that information right from Jesse's bio, or it'll link to it, which is a nice feature. Oh, not yet. It's taking a little while for it to render, perhaps. We'll come back and try that in a little bit. But while we're in the search box, put a slash in the search box so people can see all the different slash commands that are available. So, for example, you can check on someone's activity. You can see when they're available. You can set your own availability of if you're available, away, busy. You can call someone. You can set for do not disturb. You can look up particular files. You can see all the places where there were app mentions or go to particular channels. So it's a pretty cool way of getting fast access to different parts. But you can also initiate chats in this. So let's just type in Jesse's name, and this is our way of transitioning from our channel conversations into, I don't think you need a slash there. There we go. Yeah, so if you select Jesse, this will rehydrate a chat that's going on. And you'll notice in the left rail, in the app bar, we've chosen chat. The left rail is now populated with all the various chats that Giuliano's engaged with. And it has brought up a chat that he's having with Jesse. Now, another way to create a chat is to click on the piece of paper and pen icon that's just to the left of the app bar. And for example, if you wanted to do a chat with Tracy, is it Tracy? There we go, yeah. You could initiate that chat. And what's interesting here is you'll notice that Tracy is currently on Skype for Business. So at least as far as we know, she's not using Teams. There can be a little bit of a lag there. But this is an example of the kind of one-on-one messaging that goes back and forth between Skype for Business online and Microsoft Teams. So you can still work together even if not everyone is yet on Teams. Um, so let's click on Jesse's conversation, the existing conversation we have with Jesse, and we've got a couple things that are going on here. First of all, you'll notice that the tabs across the top are different than they were in the channel. So in the channel we had conversation and files, and then we had wiki. In this we have additional options, organization. So clicking on that, you can see where Jesse is in the organization. And this is just pulling information from Active Directory. So in this case, that's not yet supported at Zoom, so they haven't implemented that feature. You can click on activity, and say you had a hallway conversation with Jesse, and he said, "Oh yeah, I saw that you wanted me to follow the urgent channel," and you can then see that in fact he's done that. But clicking on the plus sign, we can see there's a few options for additional tabs that you can have in this one-on-one chat. One of those is a website. So let's click on website, and let's create a tab. Let's call this homepage. And what's nice about this is any third-party service that uses secure HTTP can be added here. And I noticed the Zoom AI homepage was a secure HTTP site. So let's Alt-Tab over to your browser and capture that URL. And then we can add that as a tab right here in this one-on-one chat. So I find this is a great management tool. So with my direct reports, I have chats. We have in some cases you can save this and it'll create that tab. In some cases, we have an integration with the Visual Studio, and we can track the different engineering items that the person's working on, and that's right there as part of our chat, and we can integrate it together. If you click on Save, it should create this. There we go. Okay. So it's added an additional tab there. You can also add a Power BI report, say a dashboard for that individual, could be added right here. And chats, where a lot of the activity is in Teams, probably majority of most tenants have their conversations in chat. I'd mentioned you can have up to 2,500 people in a team. Now, in a chat, you can have up to 20 people on a chat. So let's add someone else in the organization to this chat just to see how we would do that. There's a icon with a plus and 2 people next to it in the upper right, and that is how we can add people to this conversation. And why don't we add Paul to this? There we go. Select Paul and click on Add. And now you can see it's a 3-way conversation. And what's nice is that these conversations that have more than a couple people, you can customize. So why don't we put in a post here about Teams best practices. And I want to show kind of a rough edge Teams that we have to sort out. And that is, in the background, Teams is doing various tasks. I mentioned the indexing it's doing for search. Another thing that's happening in the background now is when you create this group chat, it's actually creating a folder in OneDrive for Business to store files. And it hasn't been completely set up yet. So why don't you type a message that says, here are Teams best practices. And you can hit return. And when he does, you'll notice it adds the icon for an attachment. So let's go back and attach that file. So edit the message, and There we go. And you'll notice that now there is the paperclip icon, which wasn't there originally. Click on the paperclip icon and upload from your computer, and upload the best practices presentation, which I believe is in your Microsoft folder. There we go. And you'll notice that Giuliano is demoing all of this on the Mac client. Everything is the same in Windows, which is great. Everything we're showing here. Now, in this case, because he's edited it, he needs to click on the paper airplane icon to send this. And this is now attached in Giuliano's, excuse me, it's now stored in Giuliano's OneDrive for Business. In order to see that, let's go to the app bar and the files icon in the app bar to show where this file is being stored on the far left. It'll show up there. There's a little bit of indexing happening there in the tab. But see on the app bar below activity, chat, teams, etc., there's a files icon. Perfect, thank you. And OneDrive is one of the options. Let's click on OneDrive. And in Giuliano's OneDrive for Business, there has been created this Teams Chat Files folder. And let's click on that, and we'll see that that is where the file is stored. He has the option of opening this in OneDrive if he wants to do additional work. He can get a link if he wants to share this in other ways. But the key thing here is the person who posts the message, who adds the file and posts it, is the person who has it stored in their OneDrive for Business in this particular Microsoft Teams chat files folder. And other people in the chat are given shared privileges to it. So today, Teams can only have 20 people in a group chat, and the reason is because OneDrive for Business has a maximum of 20 people in a that you can share a file with. So we're working together with them to expand the number of people you can have in a chat conversation. So going back into let's use the back arrows in the top up above the left rail. There we go. And this will help you navigate back to previous things you've been in. You can click again. It'll take you back into your conversation with Jesse and Paul. Perfect. And you'll notice a couple things. One, that this is a favorite conversation. You could unfavorite it if you wanted to. You also can change the name of this to Teams Best Practices as the name of this chat. So if you have more than 2 participants, you have that option of changing the name and coming up with a friendly name for a group chat. All right, that's perfect. And let's just click on the Conversations tab. It's taken a while for that Files tab to index the file and show it, but it's right here within the conversation, and you can see it was stored under Files in the Files app. Now, I've shown things you can do with conversations. You can also have chats with bots. One bot I want to point out initially is the T-bot. So if you could click on the T-bot, which is by default on everyone's chat apps when they start, I want you to favorite that, because as people do additional conversations, T-bot will get pushed further and further down, but it's really a helpful bot. First of all, you could ask a question like, what is a tab? And it will tell you about tabs. And it pulls that information from the help file and the frequently asked question, or FAQ, tabs that you can see across the top. But this is a helpful place if you have a question about Teams. But I think even more important is the Videos tab. So if later on, you said, how did Bill show us to do, to work with channels? All of that information that we're going over is here in these helpful little videos, and you can see that there's half a dozen or so of them, And I really recommend that when you get a chance, you go through those because you'll learn additional tips and tricks going through those videos. And then the other helpful tab is release notes. And if something shows up in Teams and you're wondering why is it that way, for example, this store icon showed up just recently. Well, here is an explanation of what is going on with the store. And so this is a very helpful bot, but Zoom AI has its own bot that Juliana can interact with. So why don't you give an example of that, Juliana?
Sure. So the bot works like just like you said, a normal conversation that you can have with your bot. So let's say I want to have a meeting with Jesse next week. So all you have to do is open a conversation with the bot, like a normal chat, click on it, and then say like meet with with Jesse next week. Then hit return, and then the bot gets back to you with the right Jesse because he knows my contacts. With the right time length, so I said next week, right? So it's going to be from February the 12th to February the 16th. And because the bot knows my work time preferences, he knows that I like to work from 10 to 6 p.m. And the bot knows that I like to have meetings for an hour. So it gets back to me saying it's going to be for an hour. So I could have said, for example, it's going to be a meeting for sales review. So you can, instead of saying yes or no, you can say that for sales review. And then hit enter again. And the whole meeting creation gets updated. So it's everything that I said before plus for sales review. And when I hit yes, the bot sends Jesse a message with my available time slots. But because we're working in the same company, for the same company, the bot knows the times that we're both available. So you can either choose, for example, one day from 4 to 5, that works for me, works for him, or you can let them decide. When you click on 4, the bot sends an email with all my available time slots. So the person gets to choose like the most convenient time for them. But I'll just click on 1 because I know we're both free. And when I do that, and you can also notice how it's all organized in cards for MS Teams. That's really clean. And when I click on 1, the bot gets back to me saying, "Okay, Juliana, I'll take care of this. I have sent Jess Albinston a calendar invite, and that's it. The meeting is now set. It's ready to go."
Yeah, this is really slick. You can see why I find this is something I use on a daily basis. So thank you. Now let's go back into Teams because I wanted to expand on what you can do in terms of customizing the tabs in Teams. So we showed in one-on-one chats you can have a set of options. Now in a channel you can have quite a bit more. So clicking on the plus, we can see that there is a bunch of options for tasks. And the way I think about tabs is in a common workspace, you often have whiteboards. Say in a project room, you'll have whiteboards on the wall. And you'll naturally, put sections of the whiteboards for different things. A task list, a budget, or some kind of metrics, maybe a dashboard on results. You might have a timeline for your project. And all of these can be thought of as different tabs within a channel. So in this case, let's create a task list clicking on Planner. And this is a really helpful tool that's part of Microsoft Teams. It's part of Office 365 suite, but it's exposed in Teams. And let's come up with a task list. and this will add a new tab right across the top. Um, and Navigating to that tab, we have the option of creating a new task. So let's create a new task to review the budget. We'll set a deadline for that. There we go. We'll assign that to Jesse. And hitting create or add task, that adds this to the task list. So these are the items to do. Now, let's add a new budget, which is a new bucket, if you will, that is in progress. And you can drag back and forth these. So you could drag that budget review task item to in progress. Yeah, you actually want to put it below the plus sign. There we go, right there. Perfect. All right. And let's talk about how you might assign this to Jesse. So you've got the task, but now you've got to provide him with the budget. So let's go back to the Conversations tab. You're still in the same app. That's right, in the Conversations tab. Perfect. And let's start a new conversation. And I always, when I started, actually, you could reply. Actually, why don't you reply to this task? You could reply to this task and say at Jesse, backspace. It's a little more informal. Jesse, please review the budget. And let's attach that by clicking on the paperclip icon and choosing from the folder. There we go. Click one more time. It's interesting that's working in the background. There we go. Upload from the computer. So some of these background processes, can take a little while just when you're starting, but usually, as you can see, it's pretty quick. We used to do these all by default, and notice the green status bar on the bottom. You always want to wait for that to finish, and now you can hit send. We used to do these things in the background, but it led to some performance, storage issues where a lot of these entities were being created and not being used. So we create them on demand now. Now let's click on the Files tab, and we'll see that this file is being stored in SharePoint. So if you remember in chat, those files were stored in OneDrive. Here it's stored in the SharePoint share associated with this team in a folder associated with this channel. And you can open in SharePoint. So click on the Open in SharePoint up above. There we go, right there. And this will open in the browser, and you now have the full power of SharePoint available to you. So you can set up a workflow. You can check files in and out. You can set up access privileges. All of those are there, but we've simplified the options in Teams in order to have sort of the 80% case covered. And that's what you see when you're in the Files tab. Click on Documents in the navigation line there, and we'll see that there is, there we go. And you can see that there's a folder created for the general channel. Once we attach something into the urgent channel or any other channel, there'll be a folder for each one of those channels. And you can navigate here within SharePoint, but most of our customers find it so much easier to navigate on a per topic basis just within Teams. So let's go back into Teams, and what's nice is you're automatically provisioning SharePoints based on each topic or each project team, and you can add additional folders here. So for example, you could go into New and create a new folder, and it could be like Old Budget or something, and you'd have that as context for the new budget. And that creates, this hierarchy. And there's people who, have existing SharePoints. You can add an existing SharePoint by clicking on the plus sign and choosing SharePoint as one of your options, you'll see the SharePoint icon. Let's not do that now in the interest of time. I just want to show this one last feature, and that is how to promote the budget file into being its own tab. So there is a ... or more menu associated with this particular file, and you can do this either here in the Files tab or in the Conversation tab. If you go to the bottom, you can add this as a tab. And when you add it as a tab, it adds it right up into the list. Now, we're working with a couple of these tabs that, we haven't really worked with the Wiki tab, which is a very helpful way of keeping notes. Let's drag the Wiki tab to the end. So if you click on the Wiki tab, you can drag that all the way back to the end and just have this organized. And everyone will see that in the same way. There we go, you can arrange those. And everyone will see this in the right order, so your project owner can easily manage these tabs for the entire project team. And then let's have a conversation around this. So right above the word edit, the purple word edit, there is a, almost looks like a cartoon. There we go. Clicking on that, you can start a conversation and just say, at Jesse, is this too much? Something along those lines. And then he can respond right here within this Conversation tab, but you also can follow all of this right here within, this all sort of mashed together in Conversations. So going to the Conversations tab, we can see everything that's been going on in each one of the chats associated with each one of the tabs. So it's just a great way for a team to work together to manage their information and to create a single source of truth for each particular project or each particular topic. Good question, Jesse. I think that money's in U.S. dollars, so it might be a little high. And you can acknowledge with a little like there, Juliano, to show that you're going to maybe trim that budget a little bit. Okay, so we've talked about chat conversations, shown the options within chat to customize the tabs, and now we're showing how you can customize the tabs here within channels. And this, of course, is really the centerpiece of Teams. It's a chat-based workspace. And each of those tabs can, in a sense, represent sections of a whiteboard in a group space that we've brought here to the virtual space. So this has been a quick overview of Teams. This is the way we introduce Teams within Microsoft, and I hope it works well within all of your companies. But now, if people have any time left, I have a few more minutes. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to stop the recording and let me answer your questions that you might have. And I'm also open to answering any questions that have been saved